Hello, students. Hope your day was great. You're welcome to the fourth lesson and the fourth topic in CRP 304 Principles of Horticultural Crops. And I still remain your facilitator, Alawode Yetunde. Today, we'll be talking extensively on harvesting and we'll be defining harvesting, talking about the methods of harvesting, and we'll also be discussing some post-harvest cultural practices, which involves preservation, processing, storage, and marketing. And affiliated activities also involve transportation and handling. We'll be talking extensively on them, and I'll be showing you some pictures, some exciting pictures also. So let's go. Thank you and have a blessed day. You're welcome once again. Like I said in the previous slide, my name has not changed. I'm your facilitator Alaude today, and my email address is yalaude@noun.edu.ng. We'll be discussing harvesting, and we want to start by definition. And harvesting is simply the practice of removing crop produce, be it the fruits or the seeds or the flowers, depending on what is of economic importance to the farmer when they are ripe for marketing or processing. So harvesting is one of the important operations that decide the quality as well as the storage life of a produce, because harvesting should be prompt and timely so that the produce on the field will not deteriorate and get spoiled. So it helps in preventing huge losses of fruits and vegetables. Harvesting is a life saver. Now, there are some factors that contribute to the difficulty or the ease of a harvesting operation. And the first factor is the part of the economic importance of the crop. That is, which part is of economic importance? Is it the flower? Is it the leaf? Is it the fruit? If it is the fruit that is of economic importance to the farmer, then that is easier to harvest than the flower. If it is the flower of the plant that is of economic importance, we all know that flowers are fragile and they could break. So it makes harvesting a bit difficult. The second point here is the growth habit, either annual or perennial. And we know that annual crops are usually short, so you may have to bend down to harvest them. Not in all cases though, but they are not as tall as trees, which are perennial crops, and which are more difficult to harvest. Also, the market needs or uses of this particular crop that you are harvesting is also very, very important. And the maturity pattern. The maturity pattern is also important. How does it mature? Does it mature underneath the ground or above the ground? If it is above the ground, it's easier to harvest than the ones that you have to dig up, because you have to be careful while you're digging up so that you will not destroy the root, which is edible or of economic importance to the consumer. For example, potatoes are dug up while oranges are being picked during harvesting. And also for some cultivars of crops, we have crops that are determinate in growth and others are indeterminate. So these are factors that make harvesting either easy or difficult. We'll be moving on to the methods of harvesting, and there are two. The first is the manual or hand harvesting, and the second is the mechanical harvesting. And manual simply means the use of your hand to either uproot or cut or pick or even pluck the crop produce. And this is done where where your hand can reach, because that is how you can harvest. Of course, you're using your hand, so it's less expensive and it is also easy to do. As for the mechanical harvesting, this is the use of machines like your combine harvester, your tools like your hoes, your machete to harvest this crop produce. And this is done when crops cannot be reached with your hand, and it is also more economical for the crop. It may be a bit expensive though, but it is better for the crop. After harvesting, you cannot just leave your produce like that and watch it deteriorate. So there are some activities that you have to carry out, which are called the post-harvest cultural activities. And these major activities include one, preservation, two, processing, three, storage, and the fourth one is marketing. There are also some affiliated activities to the ones mentioned above, and the first one is transportation, the second is handling. So we'll be looking at this one after the other. One here is processing, and processing simply means value addition to your farm produce in the form that is more acceptable, more attractive to the consumer. And this processing could be partial, just halfway, like your vegetables. You don't need to process your vegetables a lot because they are consumed fresh. Or it may be total, like your oranges. You may convert them to juice. You may process them to different to jam, whatever you is acceptable to your consumer. So mostly vegetables are usually partially processed or preserved. They are just trimmed. You trim off the roots and then you wash them and slice them. And in some cases, you can dehydrate them for a longer preservation, like your amaranthus and your celosia. And for the fruits vegetables, you can slice them and dry for preservation. For example, your pepper and your onions. However, some leafy vegetables can also be blanched in hot water. You blanch them in hot water just for some seconds to so that they will still retain their green color, and then you put them in the refrigerator where they can spend a few more days before they start going bad. So that is what processing is all about. One is storage. After processing, of course, you have to store, and vegetables in their fresh state cannot store for long period of time, or else they will start to wilt, they will start to wither and change color. So you do not want that. You want them to stay fresh. So you have to consume them um, in a fresh state. And storage or preservation is usually done to keep vegetables for just a short period of time, because vegetables are usually highly perishable in nature, so they do not store for a long period. So short-term storage can be done using your clay pots, that's the local way of doing it, or padded materials, and you have to store under cool, humid conditions. Use of class activity, I want you to explain the term harvesting and then list and explain the methods of harvesting horticultural crops. I'll just give you 10 seconds to reason it out, and then we'll continue with our lecture. Okay, so moving on, we are going to talk about marketing. And marketing is the movement of the vegetable from the farm gate to an accessible area for the consumers, because you cannot bring the consumers to the farm. Most times your farms are usually very far, so you cannot bring your consumers to the farm. So you have to bring it to a meeting point, to an accessible place where consumers will come and purchase whatever you want to sell. And in doing so, you have to be careful so that you will not destroy these vegetables, because you want to get value for your produce. So the vegetables should still retain their good nature, their good color. They should still be firm, and the means of transportation to achieve these goals should also be considered. So when you want to bring your vegetables to the market, you have to be careful. So you have to carry them carefully and transport them also carefully. Also, the time of arrival at the market should also be considered because these vegetables, you want them to still remain fresh. So the best time to go and harvest is very early in the morning or late in the evening to bring it to the market very early in the morning. So the time of arrival is important. The vegetables have to arrive at the market fresh so that your consumers will be able to buy them. And also the quality and the quantity that is demanded by consumers should be considered. If it is vegetables, of course, you need more um you need more quantity, and but if it is your fruits, it depends on whatever the consumers want. And also to make your produce more attractive, you have to package it very well. So you have to use appropriate packing material or packaging material like your um, transparent bag, your paper bag can be used for packing your farm produce so as to make it attractive to the customers. So as a means of um, definition, we want to talk about post-harvest technology. And post-harvest technology involves all treatments or processes that occur from the time of harvesting until the crop produce finally reaches the consumer. So you're talking of from the time of harvesting until it finally reaches the house of the final consumer. Efficient techniques for harvesting involve transportation, handling, storage, processing, packaging, and marketing, like we have listed in the previous slide. And these are the components of post-harvest chain. So the most important goals of post-harvest technology are you want to keep your product cool. And then the second point is you want to avoid moisture loss. You don't want your um, produce, your vegetables to look wilted, to look down and not look. You don't want them to be kind of soft and not look rigid and firm. So you want to avoid moisture loss. And most times when you get to the market, you see the marketers or the traders trying to put water on the vegetables so you can still see them looking alive and fresh. And you don't want and you want them to slow down in chemical changes, undesirable chemical changes. You don't want your vegetables to lose their bright green color. And also, the third point is to avoid physical damage such as bruising to delay spoilage. So, these are the goals of post harvest technology. Yeah, we're going on to handling, and handling is also a very, very important part of post harvest technology. This practice is carried out immediately on the harvested crop produce before it gets to the consumer. So the handling process includes washing and then sorting and grading. So when you harvest your farm produce, you want to quickly wash them and then you sort them into sizes, into colors, into grades, and you grade them. So that is what handling is basically about. It's about washing, sorting, and grading. So washing is simply cleaning of your crop produce from soil and dirt. Of course, everybody knows that um, the medium of growth is the soil, but you don't want to take your produce to the market looking all soiled up. So you want to wash the crop produce from soil and dirt, and then you want to package it very well before you take them to your consumers. And vegetables are generally not washed before packaging or marketing. Yes, they are usually not washed because most times it's the leafy part. So once you just trim off the roots or the stem or whatever, you don't want to make your vegetables to be too watery or too waterlogged. So what you do is that you just shake them lightly. You shake your vegetables lightly so that the soil particles will just um, be out. However, your fruits, like your apples, your oranges, should be washed before packaging or marketing. And your root vegetables, for example, your carrots, you cannot just bring them to the market like that. They have to be washed to remove the soil before marketing. Your onion bulbs are not usually washed, but they are cured. Like you dry them, you expose them to a bit of sunshine so that you can increase the shelf life of these onions. Washing, of course, you want to sort and grade, and after harvesting, the produce are usually sorted into different categories. Some farm produce are needed ripe, some are needed in an unripe form, and then some are totally discarded. They are just useless. You don't need them. So you have to sort them into ripe, unripe, and the ones you throw away, the discards. So this is a form of sorting, and sorting and grading are two post-harvest operations that are designed for this for quality pricing. Okay, when you see some grades, some are grade A, like your cashew nuts, for example. Some are whole, they are grade A. They come in grades. Some are split, they are broken, grade B. So they come in different grades. So hand harvesting allows only a certain quality of products to be picked, and during this process of sorting, you want to remove the defective forms, the deformed fruits and vegetables. You want to remove the immature products, and you also want to remove or eliminate the diseased products. So that is why sorting is very important. However, cracked or broken products with blemishes may not be totally discarded. You just sell them at a cheaper rate. Their price will be lowered. They may not um, they may not be destroyed like your tomatoes in the market. Some of them are crushed and they are being sold. Some people will buy it like that. You just reduce the price. So that is what sorting and grading is all about. Now we want to talk about storing unprocessed produce. And this is the act of preserving harvested products to extend their shelf life for future use. So you're preserving your harvested products for a longer period of time. And horticultural crops are mostly perishable, so they have to be stored properly to avoid post-harvest losses. So um, you have storage conditions like your temperature, your humidity, and light. These are the conditions that you know that speed up the deterioration process. So you want to be able to preserve your crops and prevent them from deteriorating. Also, it's important to note that there are general goals for storage, and the first goal is to slow down the rate of respiration, because if the respiration is high, then that produce will get spoiled easily, faster. So you want to slow down the rate of respiration that is occurring in the living tissues of the produce, and you also want to conserve the moisture of these tissues to prevent dehydration. So these goals are usually accomplished by providing the exact type, the exact and appropriate temperature range. It's usually on the cool or cold side, And also you want to maintain good levels of oxygen for respiration, and also carbon dioxide or carbon dioxide. And you also want to control the humidity. So in fruits and vegetables, okay, you have to store them under relatively high humidity so that you can retain their succulence and general quality. So for example, in lettuce and spinach, they require like 90 to 95% relative humidity, and in the case of garlic, dry onion, they require a lesser humidity, which is 70 to 75%. Now we want to talk about how to store using the low temperature method. And like you know, temperature affects the rate of respiration, and low temperature, what it does is that it slows down biological and enzymatic reactions of stored produce. So the best way or mechanism for cooling is by refrigerating, using your refrigerator. And you also have trucks that have large containers, refrigerated trucks that transport fresh horticultural produce over long distances without spoilage. So the temperature required for this is between 0 to minus 10 degrees Celsius. So this is using the low temperature method. And another method you can use is low moisture method, and you can use them in grapes, in crops, including your grape, your date, your apples. Okay, so you can store them for long by drying. Okay, low moisture, that means you want to remove as much moisture as you can and still leave that produce intact. So the best way you can do this is by solar dehydration, that's using the sun, because of course the sun is in abundance here in this part of the world, and is relatively inexpensive. So you have long hours of sunshine. So all you do is that you just lay um your paper bag or your sack on the floor, clean them up, and then you spread them. You slice these fruits in smaller. You reduce them to smaller sizes, and then you spread them so you can preserve them longer that way. Or otherwise, for rapid dehydration of large quantities, what you can do is to use the forced hot air method, that is introducing a blast of hot air at the temperature of 60 degrees to 70 degrees Celsius. You use it and for a short period of time. So what the hot air does is that it reduces the water in your produce. So what you want to do is that you want to reduce the moisture content to like 8 to 12%, depending on the kind of produce that you are using. Now, fumigation. We want to talk about fumigation because that is also very important in storage, especially of your dry grains and fruits, such as your grapes and your citrus. You want them to be free from insect or rodent attack, and you don't want any decay organisms to grow on it. So it's, that is why you have to fumigate. And one important and widely used fumigant is the methyl bromide, which usually um, you use in storage houses, and you can also use sulfur dioxide to protect your grapes from decay. So that is talking about fumigation. Right now I want to talk about freezing. Like you can see in this picture here, these are raspberries, and they have been they are frozen. So This is one of the quickest and most common method of preservation. So you call it quick freezing, and you use it on your fresh produce. But the main disadvantage, because nothing there's there are always disadvantages for every advantage, and one major disadvantage is that it could cause damage to the physical or structural integrity of your product, especially your fruits. You have what is called the chilling injury. You can have it on your fruits. So that is one major disadvantage of freezing. For best results, your freezing should be done rapidly, because if you use the slow freezing method, you get larger ice crystals. And what these crystals do is that they rupture the tissues and the cells, and then when the ice is off, then the fruit collapses. So rapid freezing is the one that results in tiny crystals, and these ones do not rupture the cells. So you are quick freezing at around temperatures of um, minus 29 to 40 degrees Celsius. And however, some produce may still lose their color and flavor and nutrients. So it's always important to protect your produce from protect them against dehydration, and then you have to wrap your frozen um, produce in, for example, your plastic wrap. So this one will help to protect against dehydration. Another method is canning. Yes, that is even better than the freezing. So another method that you can use to preserve your fruits and vegetables is canning, and this is placing them in airtight or hermetically sealed containers, like you can see in this picture here. These cans or tins, they are airtight and they are hermetically sealed. And what they do is that when they put the fruits and the vegetables in it, they now sterilize it. When after sealing it hermetically to remove every form of oxygen from inside, then they now sterilize it in a pressure cooker. So instead of using water, a brine solution, that is salt solution, may be used. Concentrated salt solution may be used to preserve vegetables such as your green peas, your onion, beet, and peppers. So this is how you can store them in cans. So also still talking about canning, this intense heat, you use it to sterilize your cans, your produce that are inside the can. But if it still stays for a long period of time, that's why most of your cans have their expiry date. So after or upon expiration, you see that the color is changed, the texture and the flavor is also changed, as well as the nutritional value. So it mustn't be there for too long. So low acid, that is you have to bring these vegetables or fruits to this low acid of between pH of between 4.5 to 7, and this will actually um kill the bacteria that cause food poisoning, which is the Clostridium botulinum. That's the bacteria that causes food poisoning, and they are killed under very high temperature and acidic conditions. However, because of heat treatment, yeah, heat doesn't usually kill all bacteria. So the these produce tend to spoil after uh, that when it has reached the expiry date. So it will still get spoiled anyway if they are not consumed on time. Another process is the fermentation, and this involves bacteria that decomposes carbohydrates anaerobically, and some of these producers, you know, some of these sometimes fermentation prevents the growth of bacteria. So your fermentation process always produces alcohol and lactic acid, and it may affect the taste of the foods. However, alcohol may further ferment to produce your vinegar, and certain fruits are deliberately fermented, like your wine, your fruit wine. They deliberately ferment them, and your alcoholic beverages. And you can also use another special fermentation process, which is called pickling. That's the use of salt, and you can pickle your vegetables like your cauliflower, your tomatoes, cucumber, onions can be pickled using salt. That is a special fermentation process. Also process with sugar, using high concentration of sugar to to preserve your fruit, especially fruit produce or products. And what this sugar does is that it increases the osmotic pressure to a degree that um, microbial activity is stopped or delayed, and reduces spoilage. So in the case of your fruit juice, you can process it with sugar, and when you do that, it is called jelly. And also your jam, and those are combination of concentrated fruits, you know, while your marmalade is sugar that is processed with citrus, and the rind, that's the back of the citrus, that's you get your marmalade. So these are ways that you can preserve with sugar. And if it is the whole fruit that you preserve with sugar, then the product is called a preserve. Now you have already harvested, you have sorted, you've graded, you've washed, you have done your post harvesting operation. So finally, your produce is ready for the market, and that is why marketing is very, very important. And marketing, in the simplest form, entails the supply of your satisfactory products by the producer to a consumer at a price that is acceptable to both the producer and the consumer. So in advanced economies, there's usually division of labor, and you have a host of um, providers that you call middlemen, and these are the people that move between the producer and the consumers. So that is what marketing is all about. Also, the service provider will package, store, and transport the produce to the market. However, there are some characteristics of a horticultural enterprise, and the first one is that horticultural products are usually highly perishable. That means they lose quality rapidly, and most horticultural products are usually bulky to transport. And the third point is that prices are not usually stable for horticultural products. When they are in season, they are usually very cheap, but when they are off season, then they are usually very expensive. So the prices are not stable. And the fourth point is that some storage may be required in the production enterprise. And the fifth is it is important to identify your market before producing horticultural products so you will not run at a loss. You have to know this vicinity I am, what is it that they are lacking? What do they really need? So you now go ahead and then produce your horticultural crops. Also, the sixth point is the seasonality of the product. So these are factors or characteristics of a horticultural enterprise. Said that, I have another short class activity for you. And the first question here is list three post-harvesting operations and explain any two. Secondly, we discuss five ways in which unprocessed food can be stored. And the third question is how does marketing affect horticultural crop production? These are questions that I want you to ponder upon and get answers to in 10 to 15 seconds. I've come to the end of today's facilitation, and I hope you enjoyed every bit of it. So that is what harvesting is all about. I hope to meet you again for the fifth topic, the fifth lesson next week. Until then, stay blessed.